Okay, today we're going to be talking about drugs. Basically, the federal government has spent, I'd say millions to maybe billions of dollars each year on this war on drugs. And, most people, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or just someone, most people realize, there's some problems. Well, the Libertarian Party, I think, has some stuff that makes sense. And again, I'm going to be reading from A New Vision for America, the Libertarian Party. So, it's that pamphlet again. Um, do you know who Charles Manson is? He was this notorious killer, and he was actually caught in prison dealing drugs in California's Corcoran State Prison. So he was basically locked in a steel cage, watched by armed guards, and subject to random drug testing and strip searches. Manson was still able to build a flourishing narcotics business, despite the amount of security, despite the fact that he was in prison and one of the most secure prisons. So basically, the question must be asked is, if the government can't keep drugs out of the most secure prisons, how can it keep them off the streets? It can't, although. So basically, the libertarians say it can't, although it tries desperately. In 2004, the government spent approximately 50,000 law enforcement officers to work full-time on drug cases. Despite all this increased money and firepower, the drug trade is surprisingly resilient. A government study reports that 51.1% of high school seniors have used drugs. It goes on to say the war on drugs fails to discriminate between violent drug dealers and the private actions of individuals in their own homes. So this is another problem that's discussed a lot. Like someone who's out selling drugs maybe to a bunch of kids or something like that, versus someone who's just at home, smoking a joint or something like that. In 2003, 755,000 Americans were arrested on marijuana-related charges. In the same year, this number eclipsed the number of all those arrested for murder, rape, robbery, and assault combined. So basically, people doing marijuana, they're getting more of these people are getting arrested than people who are doing other, crimes that are actually violent, like rape, robbery, and assault. So basically, in other words, the war on drugs is making your family less safe because police are preoccupied arresting nonviolent marijuana users rather than apprehending violent criminals. Libertarians don't claim that ending the war on drugs will solve every problem. Some people will always make bad choices about drugs, whether legal or illegal. The fact remains that the war on drugs isn't working. It has failed. In effect, it is another government program where failure is rewarded with additional taxpayer support. So basically, the more failure they're doing, the more money they're going to filter from taxpayers' money. The Libertarian Party is working to end the federal prosecution on marijuana patients. 7 states have legalized the use of marijuana, recommended by a doctor, to treat glaucoma, curb the nausea associated with chemotherapy, and improve the AIDS patients' appetites. Unfortunately, the federal government continues to arrest AIDS and cancer victims for the crime of pursuing the most effective medical treatment recommended by their physicians. Arresting sick and dying people is inhumane. It must stop. And their final point about drugs in this section. Sorry if I kind of paused. It looked like the video stopped, so that's why I kind of paused a minute. So basically, the Libertarians' final point about the war on drugs is reform federal drug laws, beginning with those against marijuana. States should be able to adopt alternatives to today's punitive drug laws without encountering heavy-handed interference from Washington. It's time to reform federal drug laws and take the problem out of the hands of federal politicians. It's not a perfect solution to America's drug problem, but and I'd agree with the Libertarians with their last line here, that it's not a perfect solution to America's drug problem, but it's a step in the right direction. So, what do you think? Do you think we're spending too much money on, I'd be interested to see comments. Do you think we're spending too much money on this war on drugs? Do you think we should end this war on drugs, maybe put in the hands of the states, get help to people who, are caught smoking a joint, who aren't doing it for prescription means? I'll tell you, from what I've read, there's some interesting things about the marijuana, or maybe some people would call it the hemp plant. I mean, I've heard one of the main reasons why it became illegal to begin with is because of the cotton industry lobbying to get it illegal, because it was a lot cheaper and easier to manufacture than cotton. And it can I've even heard that there's a certain seed on it that can cure things like, I think it was like last year, a few years ago, where we had the swine flu epidemic. And I've heard that there's this seed that it produces that cures and prevents the swine flu. So what are your thoughts? Should we keep spending billions of dollars on drugs, on this war on drugs? Should we find better solutions? Please leave your comments. And anyway, take care and God bless.